No. Okay. There was a question on cyphenothrene, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
I don't know. That pesticide is not at all registered in our country, and that use is very limited. I don't know. If you don't find that pesticide anywhere, I think some guide as that question. Just a minute. Okay, we will meeting after about a month. So by this week, today, tomorrow, and after tomorrow, I will try to finish up the portions. I will have two classes, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Each will be about 1.5 hour duration. I will try to complete it. Okay. So uh, today we will start pesticide residues. Just a minute. So, how many of you studied about pesticide residues and pesticide residue analysis during your PG? Suffer. Okay. Bindu, you studied in Milan, so you are familiar with that. Swadi,
Yes, sir.
you studied. What part? What all things you have studied?
Sir, just the not in depth, sir.
Safna, she has studied. Okay. We'll so first the first part we will deal with what are the steps in pesticide residue analysis. We will deal with the various steps, and in the second part we will go into the instrumentation part. We will try slightly touch the instrumentation part also, because that will be good to understand how residue analysis works. So those two things are the things remaining, and only a few minor things. Nano formulation, actually, that's not part of syllabus, but since it is a new topic, I will add into it, and I think that's the only thing remaining. Okay, so I'll share my presentation. So I will first ask a question. What is pesticide residue? How can you define pesticide residue? Can anyone?
Pesticide which is left after deposition.
Okay. Can you be a bit more? Yes, that's a very broad definition. Can you be a bit more specific that I have given the definition, given two definitions. I think the slides are visible to you. Uh, the, the definition both given by WHO as well as FAO is given. Uh, Both are almost one and the same. It doesn't differ much in meaning. So first we will take up the definition of WHO. Any substance or mixture of substances. That means sometimes we may use pesticide mixtures. So it can be a pesticide alone or a mixture of pesticides in food, feed. So here in food for man means whatever we consume. Feed for animals, uh, any substance or mixture of substances in food for man or animals. For animals, we call it as feed. So it can be the substance or mixture of substances in food for man or animals resulting from the use of a pesticide. That's what now Bindu told. That's what remaining after the use of a pesticide. So it can be a single chemical, it can be a mixture of chemicals which is present in a food for human beings or animals from the use of a pesticide. And this definition of pesticide includes not only the pesticide alone, it includes its derivatives, its metabolites, its degradation products, its conversion products, reaction products, and impurities, whatever it may be, which has some toxicological significance. I will give an example, then you will be able to understand. Can you give an example of a pro insecticide?
Malathion.
Malathion.
So, what does it get converted into?
Naloxone.
Naloxone.
So, which one is more toxic?
Naloxone.
Naloxone.
Malloxone. So if you are analyzing the residues of malathion, we should not analyze malathion alone. We should analyze malloxone too. Understood? Because the conversion product or the metabolite malloxone is more toxic than malathion. Even if, say, take the case of endosulfan. In the case of endosulfan sulfate is a degradation product. It gets degraded into endosulfan sulfate. But this endosulfan sulfate is also a toxic chemical. So the term pesticide includes, in the case of pesticide residues, it includes the parent compound, its metabolites, its degradation products, its conversion products, and even if certain impurities present in a pesticide formulation which has some toxicological significance. So the for pesticide residue analysis, it's not only we need to go for analysis of a single pesticide alone. We have to analyze. Take the case of, say, specifically in the case of malathion, we have to analyze malathion as well as malloxone, and we add the residue values of malathion and malloxone, and that value will be depicted as the residue of malathion. I will repeat it. Say if you are taking up a residue study with malathion, you should analyze the residues of malathion as also malloxone. So take, say, malathion, you got residues at 10 ppm, and malloxone you got a residue as 5 ppm. You won't report it separately. You won't report it as 10 ppm, you got 10 ppm of malathion and 5 ppm of malloxone. No. You will report it as 15 ppm of malathion. You will add the 10 ppm of malathion plus 5 ppm of malloxone, and you will report it as 15 ppm of malathion. Because that malloxone, the presence of malloxone is the result of the use of malathion in that commodity. Understood that part?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So it is a substance or a mixture of substance in food or feed after the use of a pesticide, and that pesticide includes not only the parent compound, it includes degradation, conversion products, metabolites, reaction products, impurities, whatever the chemicals after, because of resulting the use of a pesticide which is having some toxicological significance. Then the second definition given by FAA is almost same, substance or substances, but it's a bit elaborate. It encompasses a few aspects too. Substance or substances, that is mixture, a substance or mixture of substance, that is in the case of WHO definition. Substance or substances which remain in or on feed or food, that again is there in the WHO. But FAA includes a few aspects more. WHO included only food and feed, but FAO includes food, feed, soil, air, or water. That means it includes the environment too. So I consider FAO as definition as more inclusive compared to WHO definition. So a fair definition includes a substance or substances which remain in or on food or feed, soil, air, or water following the use of a pesticide. Following the use of a pesticide. That's there in WHO definition. So it can be a substance or substances which is present in food or feed, soil, air, or water following the use of a pesticide. And for regulatory purpose, that's what we discussed just now. It includes the parent compound, any degradation, conversion products, metabolites, impurities of toxicological significance. So only difference between a WHO definition and FAO definition is FAO definition includes the presence of pesticides or a mixture of substances, it metabolites, conversion products, degradation products, reaction products of toxicological significance in the environment also other than food and feed. So that is the definition of pesticide residue. And now we will go on to pesticide residue analysis. What is pesticide residue analysis? It is a quantitative and qualitative procedure. It is a quantitative and qualitative procedure. Quantitative means it measures the quantity, how much chemical is present. Qualitative means to check whether the pesticide is present or not. That is qualitative. Understood? So it includes both. First, we will check whether the pesticide is present or not. Then, if it is present, then they will measure how much pesticide is present. That is quantitative. The first one is qualitative. So, pesticide residue analysis is defined as the qualitative and quantitative analysis of representative samples. Anyway, if you're going for sampling, it should be representative. So sample means it should be representative. Scientifically, it should be representative. Of representative sample which is drawn from agriculture field, market, or environment for pesticides and their toxic metabolites. I will repeat, it's a qualitative and quantitative analysis of representative samples. That means if you're going to a market or a field, so if you have a 1 acre of vegetable field, say brinjal or bindi field, you won't take the entire commodity from that 1 acre area. You will take a sample from that area. Or if you're going to a vegetable vendor, you won't purchase the entire pesticide for entire vegetable for analysis. You purchase a sample of commodity. That sample should be representative. So it's a quantitative as well as qualitative analysis of samples. Samples should be representative, that is known. A representative sample, it can be drawn from field, that is directly from the farmers, or from the market, or from the environment. As per FAO definition, it can be from soil, air, or water. And what we analyze for pesticides and its toxic metabolites. So pesticide residue analysis is the qualitative and quantitative analysis of representative samples drawn from agriculture field, market, or environment for the presence of pesticides and their toxic metabolites. So are you clear with these two definitions? What are pesticide residues and what is pesticide residue analysis?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now let's see what are the types of residues. So depending upon the from the moment we spray the pesticide and with each passage of time, the residue, the kind of residue varies. So we have different kinds of residue such as surface residue or effective residue. The next is dislodgeable residue, penetrated residue, terminal residue, conjugate residue, bound residue, age residue, etc. We will see these different kinds of residues. So first kind of residue is surface or effective residue. Say you are taking up a spraying operation in a crop. Say in cabbage, you are spraying a pesticide. Once you sprayed the pesticide, certain amount of pesticide will be least will be wasted as runoff. That means if you spray on the crop, some droplets will not remain on the leaf and it will move into the soil and the environment as runoff. That as you might have observed. So whatever pesticide which is remaining in the crop after spraying, after the runoff, that is surface or effective residue. Understood? If you spray after if your spray is bit more, the spray droplets will coalesce and it will lead to runoff, and this runoff will reach the soil and it won't have any impact on the pest population. So only those pesticide which is remaining on the crop after the spray, that is surface or effective residue. Coming to the next type of residue, that is dislodgeable residue. Okay, you have sprayed the crop. Imagine cabbage itself. You sprayed the crop. So there was a bit of runoff and we are left with surface or effective residue. So after about 1.5 hours or 2 hours, if you re-enter the crop sprayed area again, the treated area again, then as it is just sprayed, there is a chance of the pesticide which is easily removed from the crop after spraying. So those part of the pesticide residue which is easily removable is called as dislodgeable residue, and it is considered as an index of risk to farm workers. Say, if you have visited, I don't know about Swati and Bindu, if Safna has visited Munnar area and all, this tea plantations in Munnar, if they carry out a spraying operation, they immediately fix a board, sprayed area do not enter. That is because this tea, the crop is up to this side, that only the head will be visible above the crop canopy. So if you are entering into a treated area, entering into a sprayed area, even after say 2 or 3 hours, your body will be touching all the sprayed plant parts. The runoff will be removed, only the surface or effective residue will be remaining. But a portion of the pesticide residue, which is easily removable, which can is readily removable, will get removed from the crop and it will lead to toxicity to the person moving through the crop. So that part is called dislodgeable residue. And this dislodgeable residue, the portion constituting the dislodgeable residue will decrease over a period of time. Say, today you are sprayed, and if you are entering after 6 hours, the removable part of the dislodgeable residue portion will be more. If you are entering the field after 1 day, it will decrease. After 2 days, it will decrease. After a few days, there won't be any residue which is easily dislodgeable. Could you get the difference between the surface residue and dislodgeable residue? Are you clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And the next one is penetrated residue. That's very easy. You are sprayed, there was a bit of runoff, we have the surface residue. And this surface residue will get absorbed into the plant. Even if it is systemic, if it is a systemic insecticide, it will get absorbed into the plant system, xylem and phloem vessels. And sometimes it get, if it is a translaminar, it will move along the leaf tissue. Even if it is a contact insecticide, it will be slowly binding into the plant tissues. So that kind of residue is called as penetrated residue. And this, once it is penetrated, it won't be dislodgeable residue. So that's why we normally say how much time we should give, say if you're going for a pesticide spray, what should be the time interval before any rainfall? So if you have in Kerala, we have huge monsoon. So we normally recommend farmers, if you're going for a spraying of pesticide, you should watch out that immediately after a spray there should not be any rainfall. If there is a rainfall, it will all get washed away. So what will be the usual time interval which we suggest? Anyone? Usually we recommend 3 hours. So that's because if there is a rainfall, there won't be any residue penetrated, only those most part of the surface residue will be dislodgeable residue. So if there is a rainfall, all the most part of the residue will be dislodgeable residue and it will get easily washed away. So what happens after 3 hours? This dislodgeable major portion of this residue, the surface residue, will get converted into penetrated residue and it won't get easily washed away. Now understood what is surface residue, dislodgeable residue, and penetrated residue?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now comes terminal residue. This terminal residue is nothing but, say, pesticide. Take the case of DDT. See, the major problem with DDT was not because of its extreme mammalian toxicity compared to other certain organophores, which the mammalian toxicity, Swati and Bindu just studied for air. So, what is the LD50 of DDT? Any rough idea? Hmm? Any rough idea? No? It's about 400 to 450 milligram per kg body weight. 400 to 450 milligram per kg body weight. So that LD50 value, if you compare with the carbofuran or phorate, what is the LD50 of carbofuran or phorate? Hmm? Any range at least? Anyone?
It will be more than the DDT.
No. Actually, it is less than DDT. The toxicity is less than 10 milligram per kg, 5 to 10 milligram per kg. So, see, we have more toxic compounds still in use. 5 to 10 means about 100 times more toxic compared to DDT. So, DDT, it was banned not because of its toxicity to human beings or other animals, but because of its persistence, its stability in the environment. It doesn't get break down easily, degraded easily. So terminal residue is a kind of residue which is a breakdown product. It can be the parent compound or breakdown or degradation products which are stable and it doesn't get degraded and create as many problems as the original compound. So if we have a degradation product or a conversion products which are stable in the environment and it has some toxicological significance. So that kind of residue is called as terminal residue. So a product, a conversion product or metabolite of a pesticide which is stable and has some toxicological significance similar to the parent compound, that is terminal residue. The next one is conjugate residue. That means you might have studied about we studied about GST, glutathione transferase. What does GSTs do? This enzyme glutathione transferase do?
Bind with macromolecules.
Yes. So if that product, that conjugation product, if this conjugation product has some toxicological significance, if the pesticide, if it conjugates with substrates such as sugars, amino acids, etc., if it has some toxicological significance, that is called as conjugate residue. But normally this conjugation reactions leads to easy excretion of the pesticide. So it doesn't have much toxicological significance. So if you see the definition, it's a product of secondary metabolism. That means the pesticide gets metabolized. That means the reaction is with the pesticides and with sugars, pesticides or its metabolites with sugars, amino acids, etc. And that conjugate product, if it is having some toxicological significance, it is called as conjugate residue. Coming to the next one, that is bound residue. Bound residue is nothing but the pesticide or its metabolite is extremely or strongly bound to the substrate. Say you have sprayed a pesticide to tomato and you are trying to extract that pesticide from tomato and you are not at all getting that residue. That means the pesticide is strongly bound to the, or its metabolite is strongly bound to the substrate, and we are unable to extract that pesticide with usual extraction methods. So that is called as bound residue. The residue or its pesticide or its metabolites which cannot be easily extracted by usual extraction method, that is bound residue. Then the last kind is aged residue. As the name indicates, after a period of time. Say you sprayed a pesticide, say after 1 month, if, what is the amount of pesticide present? So that is called as aged residue. So it is pesticide or its metabolite present in the environment after the application following a period long enough to allow transportation, absorption, metabolism, and dissipation process to alter the distribution and chemical nature of some of the applied residue. I will give an example. Still, we are having some controversy with endosulfan. If someone is taking up some studies on the residues of endosulfan still persisting in Kasaragod area, so the last spraying was carried out in year 1999 or something. So that's about 20, more than 20 years now. So if you're finding out some residue of endosulfan or metabolite of endosulfan such as endosulfan sulfate in soil, water, or any human blood or anything, then we can call it an aged residue. The pesticide or its metabolite is present in the environment after the application of the pesticide and following a period long enough to allow transport, absorption, metabolism, and dissipation process to alter the distribution and chemical nature of some of the applied residue. Still, if we have banned the use of BHC, if you are still finding out BHC residues, that is aged residue. So, are you clear with the different kinds of residue? Any clarification do you need? Surface residue, dislodgeable residue, penetrated residue, terminal residue, conjugate residue, bound residue, and aged residue.
So, ഏജ്ഡ് റെസിഡ്യൂല് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ തീരെ ഉപയോഗിക്കാത്ത പെസ്റ്റിസൈഡ്സിന് മാത്രമല്ലേ ഉണ്ടാവൂ?
No, it can't be said that we discontinued pesticides alone. Because say if in one area we have used carbofuran or forate or something, then if it is still continuing, then it's different. We can't say it as, say an area where carbofuran is still used 2 weeks before also carbofuran was used, one year before also carbofuran used, then we can't distinguish between the age residue. That means carbofuran just used 1 year before and now. So it's not that all the withdrawn pesticides. Say, take the case. I will give another example. Say you are switching over to organic cultivation. So you stopped any pesticide usage 1 year back, and the second year you are going for residue analysis in soil, water, or any commodity. If you detect any pesticide residue, that is age residue. It doesn't mean that that pesticide is banned or withdrawn. Understood?
Okay. Okay, sir.
Anything? Okay. Now, for what purpose we go for pesticide residue analysis? What are the objectives of pesticide residue analysis? The one purpose is to study the kinetics of pesticide metabolism. That means if you are spraying a pesticide, say you are spraying 0.05% FNOP pesticide, say malathion in a crop. So how much residue will be remaining on the crop after 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, or 2 day, 3 day, 5 day, 7 day, 10 day? That means how fast the pesticide is degraded. Based on that, we will work out the waiting period and all. So we will study the kinetics of pesticide metabolism, how quickly or how slowly the pesticide is metabolized. We call it as half-life and all. Bindu, during your study, whether you worked out any half-life, whether you worked with residues?
No, sir. Means till extraction procedure we followed later, they didn't allow for that lab.
Okay. Okay. So we can, this is usually done for all the pesticides before registering in our country, the kinetics, because that kinetic study is a must. So it varies. This kinetic study is done in crops, done in soil, because in different kind of soil, the kinetics vary. The kinetics in sandy soil will be different, clay soil will be different, and loamy soil will be different. So this kind of, because say in clay soil, the pesticide may get absorbed onto the clay particles, so it may not get easily degraded compared to a sandy soil where it can be easily leached out in water. So this kinetics we usually study, the environmental impact, the degradation in a crop, etc. And then this residue analysis is essential for working out MRL, maximum residue limit, that we will discuss how this MRL is worked out. Then is to establish waiting period, and based on the kinetics and all, we'll establish the waiting period. Then the next part is to determine the pesticide use pattern by farmers. This is very easy. So we usually carry out survey to understand the pesticide use pattern, which all pesticides are used by farmers. We usually carry out surveys, but if we can easily understand by the use of pesticide residue analysis. One is example that I will quote you is, so we are carrying out in our lab, Bellarikara lab, we are carrying out residue analysis from 4 districts of Kerala: Ernakulam, Thrissur, Palakkad, and Malappuram. Ernakulam, Thrissur, Palakkad, and Malappuram. And if from Ernakulam district, if we have some detection of pesticide residue, it's mostly comprising of chlorpyrifos. So whatever the pesticide residue detection we obtain from Ernakulam district, it mainly composed of chlorpyrifos. But other districts, chlorpyrifos is not usually detected. It is detected, but it is not as often as that from Ernakulam district. The reasons are, there are obvious reasons, because in Ernakulam district, huge area is under pineapple cultivation, and chlorpyrifos is a chemical which is widely used in pineapple belt. So chlorpyrifos is easily available in all the pesticide shops. It is easily available with the farmers also. So their first choice will be usually chlorpyrifos. So that's why. So if you carry out the continuous pesticide residue analysis, you can know which pesticides are used. So one more thing, ethion. If you detect ethion in any vegetable, you can use 99% chances that that is detected from chili. It's usually detected from chili. 99% of the time it is detected in chili. So we can say that ethion use is most in the case of chili. Then next, we can conduct risk assessment based on dietary intake of pesticide that we will discuss in the upcoming slides. And when we can study pesticide residue analysis, we can study about the effect of storage and processing methods on the persistence of pesticide residues. Say, take the case of now from C technology, one student is working over here. So she has sprayed rice for seed purpose. We can mix it with pesticides. So mixed with malathion, chlorphenapyr, and bifenthrin. So these three pesticides it is mixed. I think deltamethrin also. Yes, deltamethrin. This four pesticides she has mixed with the rice, and she is storing it for the seed is storing it for 6 months. Every month she will draw the samples from that lot and will carry out residue analysis so that we can know the effect of storage on the persistence of this pesticide residue. That means with the period of storage whether the residue is decreasing or whether the pesticide is persistent or not. So we can study the effect of storage and processing method. Processing methods, as you all know, Indian. Why Indian population? If I give a statement that Indian population is less vulnerable to the presence of pesticide residues in food commodities. Can you justify this statement, defend or refute? This is the question. Indian population is less vulnerable to pesticide residues in food commodities. Defend. You can think for about 10 seconds and answer. I will come in just a minute. Can you give any answer?
They will wait till waiting period.
Are you supporting the statement or defending or refuting the statement? First.
As per my statement, it's supporting, sir, but it's controversial only because in all Indian products having high residues in commodities.
Okay. Then you are refuting it. That means our population is more vulnerable to pesticide residues.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, Swati.
Sir, I'm also, sir, because we are taking for it from long time in our
Okay.
food.
Okay. Swapna.
Sir, less vulnerable means they are resistant, like that you are asking.
Means even if some pesticide residues are present, the harmful effects are not much there for Indian population compared to Western population.
I'm agreeing that because I think that I don't know about the comparison between Western and Indian, but all population, in case of all population, we can say that we have some metabolism like excretion, some.
See, consider the cooking pattern or dietary habits of Westerners and Indians. the Western population consume most of the vegetables and fruits as raw, as salads. They don't cook the uh, uh, vegetables and fruits much. They eat as raw as possible. Take the Indian cooking practices. We are mostly going for deep cooking of this commodity. And if you go through the literature, there are a lot of publications from India, especially from, I think, one Dr. Beena Kumari from Haryana Agriculture University. She has studied extensively on the effect of cooking on pesticide residue. Simple heating itself will degrade pesticide. So, since we are going for deep frying in oil, deep cooking at extremely high flame, it will all lead to degradation of pesticide. So that's what we can study, the processing method, the effect of processing method on persistence of pesticide residue. So that's why I told it is, as Bindu told, it's a bit controversial, but if you see, whenever we'll go it into the pesticide residue analysis definition again, then you will understand. We are normally this pesticide residue is measured. It's not normally, legally it is measured in fresh commodity. The commodity it is in trade. That means if you are analyzing pesticide residue in banana, you will analyze the residue including the peel. We will not peel off the rind and you will take the pulp alone and analyze. No, we will analyze the residue along with the peel. So that is a actually this pesticide residue analysis mainly for trade purposes. So what happens if we are cooking up, if we are processing it? Then again, all these processes will reduce the pesticide residues. Our cooking practices destroy all the things. But there is one negative aspect for this kind of, though with respect to the destruction of pesticide residues, it's good. But this deep cooking practices will destroy all the nutritious things in the vegetables and fruits. Deep frying, heating it for high flame and all, it will destroy all the beneficial nutrients from that, especially these antioxidants. It gets easily degraded. So that is one objective. The next second objective is to monitor the agriculture produce and food commodities for pesticide residues under FSSA. That's what we do. We routinely collect sample, we monitor the pesticide residues. So whether what is the status of pesticide residues in a commodity. Central government is conducting a large network project called as MTR, monitoring of pesticide residues at national level. So I have several labs under that network. They routinely conduct this analysis. Then we monitor the agriculture produce and food commodities for global trade, that export, import, etc. That means for export purposes, we have to, especially for Western countries, you have to check the samples, you have to get the report, then only you will be able to export it. Import also, we will check the samples which is brought from other countries in our ports also. We have certain pesticide residue labs at port. Here in India, the Cochin port doesn't have any residue analysis facility. Chennai lab has that facility, residue analysis facility. I think Tuticorin port also. So these two ports in Chennai has residue analysis facility. So we carry out pesticide residue analysis to know the kinetics of pesticide metabolism, to determine MRL, to establish waiting period, to study the pesticide use pattern by farmers, to conduct any risk assessment based on dietary intake of pesticides. Then what is the effect of storage and processing on the persistence of pesticide residue? Then monitoring under FSSA and for monitoring for global trade. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Then I told you about one terminology in the earlier slide, dietary risk assessment. So that part we will discuss now how MRL is worked out, what is MRL, what is ADA and all. That definitions you may be knowing. Then how we will go for this dietary risk assessment. So we will discuss about certain terminology and in the along with that we will study how this dietary risk assessment is carried out and all. The first uh, thing, the term is NOAEL, no observed adverse effect level. NOAEL, no observed adverse effect level. I will explain it with an example. Say I have invented a new chemical, and that chemical I want to study the NOAEL value. So before I have to work out about the acute toxicity, chronic toxicity, and all I have to work out. So I can't work it out. Though we may say that LD50 for mammals, we can't study the LD50 on human beings. A new chemical, we can't carry out its toxicity as in human beings and say just like this vaccines, which we normally this COVID vaccines and all. It's not normally done on humans first. It's first done on laboratory animals, and if it is considered as safe, then only we are taking up human trials. So here, in the case of a pesticides, human trials is not at all possible. So we have to rely on some lab studies with laboratory animals. Which are the common laboratory animals we use for laboratory toxicity studies?
Cockroach.
Cockroach, no.
Nutrition study.
Eh? I'm not talking
Black.
rabbits. Yes, rabbits. Rabbits are the mouse, rabbits, mouse, guinea pig,
Guinea pigs.
guinea pigs. So mainly here we are going to study about the mammalian toxicity, not the bioassay part. So mammalian toxicity we normally study with the case of this laboratory animals. So what we will do, say we have about 50 animals. We will divide it into 10 groups of 5 each. Each group we have 5 uh, rabbits each. And these 10 groups, we will provide the new chemical molecule a particular dose through the diet daily. Say we have 10 sets. I took 50 rabbits. I divided it into 10 group of 5 animal each. Each group will be given a particular dose. The group 1 will be given the lowest dose. Group 2 will be having a slightly higher dose. Group 3 will be slightly higher dose. So with each group, we will slightly increase the dose, and group 10, there will be a control group. So we will have only 9 animals, 9 groups for treatment. One will be for control. So in the ninth group, we will give the highest concentration of the chemical. And it's not a single time. We will provide the pesticide mixed in the diet along with the diet every day throughout its lifetime. So rabbit, if you are providing some carrot, you mix the carrot with that particular dose of pesticide and you will provide it to the animal. And we will provide it to that animal. So say take the case of those group, the 5 rabbits which is receiving the highest dose. After about 1 month or 2 months, these 5 animals got dead. So then the only remaining will be 8 groups along with the control. Then after about 1.5 months, the 8th group also get killed. Fourth month again, the 7th group killed. So like that, but the 3rd group or the 4th group, which was receiving the pesticide at a particular concentration throughout the lifetime, could complete its life cycle along with as the control group of animals completed its life cycle without any adverse health effect, just like the control group. It could complete the entire life cycle of a rabbit without any adverse health effect, just like the control group of rabbits we have kept. So the fourth group did not have any adverse effect even after it received a particular dose of that chemical every day throughout its lifetime. So that particular dose which was given to that particular group, say here I took the example of fourth group, that dose we will take it as no observed adverse effect level. That means it's the concentration, maximum concentration which we are provided in a diet, which will not cause any adverse effect in a test animal. Are you clear with NOAEL? We will go slowly so that the concepts are clear.
For group 1, 2, 3 അതുപോലെ തന്നെ complete ചെയ്യും.
Completing. It's the maximum concentration. One was the lowest concentration. We are increasing to the slowly with each group. So it says that up to the fourth group, there was even the fourth group, it was receiving the highest dose. Even if in between certain animals gets killed, you see whether what is the cause of the death. If it is due to some natural causes, we will discard it. If it is after carrying out some postmortem studies, if we find out that that animal got killed because of the effect of that chemical, then we will go into the next lower dose. If there is any adverse impact at any particular dose, that dose will not be taken. Only the maximum dose at which we couldn't observe any adverse effect. So we found that up to 4 there was no adverse effect. Fourth group with the adverse effect, then we will take the fourth one because that's the highest dose which doesn't cause any adverse effect. Understood?
Yes, sir.
So here the unit is milligram per kg body weight per day. Milligram per kg body weight per day. That means what is the quantity of pesticide in milligram given to the animal, we will convert it into per kg body weight of the animal, and we are giving it daily, so that's why milligram per kg body weight per day. And one major difficulty is that, so we have got NOAEL value for rabbit, but we can't say that the physiology of rabbits is the same as that of human beings. That means if rabbits can tolerate a dose of 1 ppm of a particular chemical throughout its lifetime without any adverse effect. That means NOAEL for a particular chemical in rabbit is 1 ppm. We can't say that this 1 ppm will be safe for human beings also, because rabbit is different, humans are different. But we can't carry out a trial on human beings. So trials with human beings is not an ethical thing. So what we will do is we will include a mammalian safety factor over here. We will divide the NOAEL value which we derived based on our studies with laboratory animals by 100. That means if you have got 1 ppm as the NOAEL value of a particular chemical by studying with a laboratory animal, we divide it by 100. That means the value will be 0.01, and that 0.01, that value obtained by dividing NOAEL by 100 is called as acceptable daily intake, ADI, acceptable daily intake. This is the one which is we will take it for human beings, and that is a mammalian safety factor. This is the defined as maximum concentration of a pesticide, which is when ingested over the entire life period, will not cause any adverse effect based on the knowledge at that time. That means acceptable daily intake is the say 0.01%. That's what we calculated just now. 0.01 ppm. Okay, 0.01 ppm. Even if a human being consumes 0.01 ppm of that particular pesticide every day throughout its lifetime, it will not have any adverse effect. That is derived based on NaEl value. NOAEL value. ADA is NOAEL by 100. Understood? What is NOAEL and ADA?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, this part is different. This is toxicology studies. NOAEL and ADA. ADA we don't usually work out, it's derived from NOAEL value. And the next terminology is MRL, maximum residue limit. This is a terminology which you have to understand. It doesn't have any relation to toxicity on human beings. You first make it clear. Bindu, what is, are you clear with the MRL? I think Ambali might have taught you whether MRL is a toxicological limit or not. Yes or
Yes,
no?
sir. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
The MRL value does not have any toxicological significance at all. Be clear. That means you purchased a pesticide, you purchased a commodity. Now Apple is coming into the market. It's extremely cheap now. Now in Kerala, I don't know with Bindu and Swati. Now in Kerala, Apple is available at 80 rupee per kg. So you purchase some apple, you have a doubt that that apple is laden with residues. You analyzed it in our lab, and it had some residue, and it is above MRL. Then it doesn't mean that the residue present in that apple will lead to some toxicological problems in your body. It does not mean that at all. I will explain it later. So MRL, the definition is the maximum concentration of a residue. Again, this is the maximum concentration of a residue that is legally permitted or recognized as acceptable. That is legally, underline that, legally permitted. Because this MRL value in India, who gives the MRL value in India?
Codex.
In India,
FSA.
FSSA, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. FSSA gives the MRL value, and it's not a simple value. It is given in the Gazette of India, Indian Gazette. So that is a legal value. The maximum concentration of a residue that is legally permitted or recognized as acceptable in or on a food, agriculture commodity or animal feed stuff when the pesticide is used under supervision adopting good agricultural practices. So it's a maximum concentration of a pesticide that is legally permitted or recognized as acceptable. Maximum concentration of a pesticide that is legally permitted or recognized as acceptable, which is present in food, feed, or agriculture commodity. Then comes the next thing when the pesticide is used under supervision, adopting good agriculture practices. The first part is clear. The maximum concentration which is present in food, feed, or agriculture commodity that is legally permitted, but the pesticide should be used under supervision, adopting good agriculture practices. This I will explain. Say, what is the normal recommendation of quinalphos concentration that we normally recommend?
2 ml per liter.
2 ml per liter. Bindu recommended a farmer to spray Calyx at the rate of 2 ml per liter. The farmer sprayed it at the rate of 3 ml per liter. No, it doesn't constitute good agriculture practices. Because how we derive MRL value? We derive MRL value, we have All India Network project on pesticide residue, the ACRP, ANP working in Vellayan. We have one center at Vellayan. We have such different centers, about 17 or 20 centers in different parts of the country. So a new pesticide molecule is tested in our country by a pesticide company. So what the pesticide company will do is, that pesticide company will give that sample of that pesticide to ACRP, ICR. ICR will distribute it to different stations. Say, in case of rice, those stations which carry out trials in rice will be given. Say, in all the 20 centers, 10 centers carry out trials on rice. This all the 10 centers will be given that particular sample, and they will be asked to conduct trials. The company will give the dose at which, the concentrations at which the pesticide should be used. So we carry out the pesticide spray. So immediately we usually carry out 2 doses. One the recommended dose, that is the recommended, and the double the recommended dose also will be given along with the control. And we normally go for sampling from 0th day. That means immediately after spraying, 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, like that. At different days interval, we take the sample and analyze the pesticide residue. Okay. So, if that means at the recommended dose, will the residue will be same at all the 10 locations? We conducted the trial at 10 locations. Say the residue at 3rd day, whether it will be the same at all the 10 locations.
No, sir.
No. Why? Agreed. Yes, Bindu, you can answer. It won't be. I agreed, totally agreed with you. But why it won't be the same?
Environment.
Environment factors. Say in Kerala, one location was Kerala. You sprayed the pesticide. After about 3 hours or 4 or 4th hour or 5th hour, we had a torrential rain. Some residue will be lost. Take another location was in North India, in Punjab or Haryana. It was the trial was on the first crop. The first crop, the temperature will be around 40, 38, 39, 40. In Kerala, the temperature at that time is 30 or 31. Again, a huge difference. So degradation pattern will be different. So we have at the end of the experiment, we have the residue data from all the 10 locations. We have all the data from all the 10 locations. So if we have data from all the 10 locations, say the company is fixing an MRL at 3rd day or 5th day. So at the 5th day, what is the residue at all the 10 locations? At all the 10 locations, we will see, okay, one location, one value, another location. And here we won't be taking the average value. We won't take the mean of all the 10 observations, residue values from the 10th day. We will take the value from that center which had the highest residue. Say the trial conducted at Karnataka had the highest value of residue at 5th day. Then that value will be taken, not the average. That's why we call it is the maximum concentration of residue. So this means that if we carry out the spray of that particular pesticide in our country, it is the maximum possible at that particular dose. This is the maximum concentration that is possible. In different locations, we may have lower concentrations, but in our country, this is the maximum concentration which we could observe, and that is, we call it as MRL. And that study we conducted with the recommended dose. We, we don't know what is what will be the residue value if the farmer use 3 ml or 2.5 ml per liter. So this is the how MRL is calculated. Are you clear how MRL is calculated? Then I will explain about the next part later if you understand what is MRL.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Then I have given a sentence. This is purely a trade limit and it is not a toxicological limit. Okay. I will give an example. Have you heard about a fungicide called tricyclosol?
Yes, sir.
Yes. For what purpose it is used? It is used for seed treatment in paddy. Seed treatment in paddy. And this is mainly used in North India for treating the seeds of basmati rice. And most of the basmati rice is exported from our country. First quality basmati rice and export. So the basmati rice fetches lot of foreign currency to our country. So tricyclosol became a huge issue. The residue of tricyclosol became a huge issue in the global trade of basmati rice. So if you see the MRL value, it's very funny. The MRL value for tricyclosol in rice is 3 ppm for, I don't exactly remember the value. It is 3 ppm for India, 1 ppm for USA, and 0.01 for Europe, European Union, EU. 1 ppm and 3, India and USA confused. Either it is 1 ppm or 3 ppm. So take India as 3 ppm, we tolerate more. Agreed, okay. 3 ppm MRL value in India, 1 ppm for US, and it is 0.01 ppm for European Union. Do you think that the European people population is more 100 times more? 0.01 ppm means 100 times lower value, 100 times more vulnerable to tricyclosol than the American citizens?
No.
No. And I will give another example. See, this MRL value is usually fixed based on trials in our country. If you fix an MRL in our country, it is common for all the importing commodities also. That means if we have wheat in our country, if we have MRL value for different pesticides, including insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, etc., which is recommended in wheat, that MRL value will apply for all the wheat which is imported also. So take the case of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, which is the crop grown there, whether rice is grown there? Yes or no?
Salala and all it is there.
It's very rare. It's not a major crop.
Correct.
Very rare. There, the major commodity is dates or a few other commodity. So they can't carry out this MRL trials there. So what they will do is they will fix an arbitrary. Now what the arbitrary MRL value normally fixed is 0.01 ppm, because 0.01 ppm is the level which the instruments can now detect. Below that, no instrument can detect now. So the lowest detectable level for residues with the current instrumentation is 0.01. So what Saudi Arabia did was, whatever be the food commodity imported into their country should have an MRL value of 0.01 ppm, irrespective of the pesticide, irrespective of the commodity. and no country accepts Codex MRL value. Codex MRL value, Codex Alimentarius Commission is under UN, FAO, and WHO. Actually, it is under FAO, but we have a joint FAO WHO meeting to have on pesticide residues, where FAO and WHO comes together, and Codex fixes an MRL for each pesticide in each commodity. So that is the internationally accepted residue value. But no country accepts that Codex value, and they fix arbitrarily their own residue value. Europe can easily fix that 0.01 ppm tricyclosol residue in basmati rice because they don't cultivate basmati rice in that country. They can fix their own value. Only thing is that if they fix 0.01 ppm of tricyclosol value, Indian exporters will find it extremely difficult to export that commodity into Europe because 0.01 ppm, it is 10 ppb. A little bit, somehow it is detected, the commodity will get rejected. So if a country doesn't want the import of a particular commodity to protect their own interest, their own farmers, they will fix a very low MRL value. It is not at all based on any toxicological study. It is purely a trade limit.
Sir,
Understood?
global ട്രേഡിനെ നന്നായിട്ട് അഫക്റ്റ് ചെയ്യില്ലേ?
Yes.
Profit.
This is mainly we call it as non-trade barriers. If you go discuss with any economist, they will say certain barriers put forth for global trade. So MRL is such one barrier put forth by countries to prevent the import of commodities from certain countries. Say if we want to prevent the import of spices from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka imports a lot of spices into our country. We have a free trade agreement with Sri Lanka. So if we want to have, if we want to stop the import, one thing we can do is increase the analysis, sampling and analysis of the spices coming from Sri Lanka. If you carry out more sampling and more analysis, more and more we will detect residue, and you can discard, you can reject that consignment. So all these are trade barriers. Then if all the countries can accept to Codex MRL, it's fine. It's the internationally accepted MRL value. But no country accepts, they fix their own MRL value. So that's why we call it as, it is a trade limit, not a toxicological limit. I will explain again this dietary risk assessment. I will explain in the next 10-15 minutes, then you will understand. Okay, fine. Shall I move to the next part?
Yes, sir.
Are you getting bored? Shall I stop it or can continue for 10-15 minutes more?
You can continue, sir.
Okay. So next, it won't be a theoretical class. I will unshare it and I will. So I should, I will ask you to give, just a minute. Now let's see how this dietary risk assessment is worked out. Usually I use board for that. The slides won't work for that. Okay. One of you should, I will ask what all things you consumed and the quantity you consumed yesterday. Anyone can come forward daily from morning till night, whatever you consumed. Okay. I will share a window, an Excel sheet. Yes. Okay, who is going to tell me? Swati, Bindu, or Safna? Anyone can come forward. Can you share? Can you see my Excel sheet now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then anyone who is coming forward? Otherwise, I will call you. Call your name.
So I will tell.
Okay. It's yesterday morning. What did you do first time from morning onwards?
Mm, 1 cup ragi malt.
Eh?
1 cup ragi malt. Like
Ragi. Okay. Fine. Then 1 cup. So what will be the quantity roughly?
roughly two, 200 ml.
200 ml. Okay, I will convert that 200 gram. Okay.
Mm.
Then
Then appam.
appam. What all things go into preparing an appam?
Rice powder and water, salt.
Rice. Rice. Okay. How much quantity? Roughly.
Quantity means 4 appam.
Again, roughly, I would put 100 gram.
Mm.
Okay.
Fish curry.
Salt and water, I avoided. Salt and water, we don't have any MRL value. Okay. Then,
Curry, parayano.
Curry, yes. Everything
Fish,
what is
fish curry. Fish
fish
curry.
curry. Fish
Without
doesn't
fish.
have MRL value. I will avoid fish. Okay, anyway, I will take fish. How much quantity? 150 gram.
No, that much. Just trace,
50. Okay.
trace it.
Okay. I will put all are in unit is in gram. Okay, so that you can easily have. Then what all things you added? Only fish. What all things you added to prepare this fish curry?
Um, onion, tomato, ginger,
Onion, tomato,
ginger,
ginger,
tamarind,
tamarind,
green chili,
green chili,
water, salt.
water and salt I avoided. Okay. So how much quantity of onion? I'm not asking the quantity of onion you put into that while preparing the curry. How much quantity of onion you consumed? We are calculating the dietary risk assessment.
Mm.
Roughly, I'm not asking the exact value.
3 spoons I may consume in that.
Okay, I will put it at 5 gram.
Yeah, that will be okay.
Tomato, I'll put it at 5 gram. Ginger as 1 gram. Tamarind as 1 gram. Green chili again 2 gram. Okay, is it fine?
Yeah, fine, sir.
Okay, curry leaf you forgot.
Yeah, curry leaf is there.
Curry leaf 1 gram. Okay, then. So your breakfast is over. Then what for lunch?
Rice,
How much?
1 bowl.
1 bowl. So it
Means
will be
1
200
plate.
gram. 200 gram.
Then again fish curry,
So I'm adding
cowpea.
that 200 gram rice to over here. Okay.
Mm.
So it will be 300. 200 plus 100, 300. Okay. Then again fish curry. The same fish curry?
No, new
No.
one.
Okay. So again 50 gram of fish.
Yeah. Then fried one, fried fish, 1
So
or 2.
fried fish, it will be
Oil,
oil. We don't have MRL value much. Oil avoid. Then chili powders, whatever you use.
chili powder, turmeric powder,
Uh,
and again ginger, the
turmeric. Turmeric, I put 1
ginger,
gram.
garlic.
garlic 2.
We have to add
Chili
the rice.
I will add over here 3.
Mm.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Garlic also. Garlic we have forgotten.
Garlic. Okay, garlic. One thing I will ask, did you consume garlic or did you add garlic to that curry? Just a minute.
Add.
സാറേ ഞാൻ ക്ലാസ്സിൽ അത്യാവശ്യമാണ്. ഓക്കെ. Did you consume garlic or nobody? Most of the time, what
I'll
will happen
consume.
is
I'll consume.
Okay, I put 2 grams. What about curry leaf?
I won't consume.
So I removed curry leaf because whatever things you consume, then that's only constitute the risk.
Yeah.
Okay. Then only rice and fish fry.
Cowpea peri.
Cowpea. So 25 gram.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will
Then
consume more.
I consume more. So it will be, let it be 50.
Yeah.
Again, it contains chili powder.
No, in
No,
cowpea it's onion, small onion.
small onion. So I will add small onion over here. So it will be say 10 gram. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
No. Okay. For dinner.
For dinner, I have sir ഞാൻ ഔട്ട്സൈഡാ കഴിച്ചേ. വീട്ടില് പഴംപൊരി ഉണ്ടാക്കിയിരുന്നു. അതും
Okay.
ചിക്കൻ
So
കറിയും കൂടെ കഴിച്ചു.
okay. So banana.
Fry with
Banana. We'll
chicken.
say the banana. Banana. Then it will be quantity roughly it will be 100 gram.
Yeah.
Then you prepare it maida.
Rice powder and chapati means atta powder.
Okay,
With
rice.
some apple soda, like soda powder.
Okay, so rice powder it will be around 10 grams roughly.
Yeah.
Or 20. Okay, 3 to.
Roughly, it don't require, it doesn't require that much powder. We'll
Okay,
just mix.
so it will be 3 ton. Okay, wheat again
Wheat
10 grams.
powder. Not enough.
10 grams. Then chicken again. Chicken I am avoiding. Chicken we don't use pesticides. So what all things went into the chicken? Chicken curry, onion.
Yeah, same thing. Onion,
Same.
tomato,
Okay,
chili, ginger,
20.
not
Then
tamarind. No,
3 chili, green chili,
chili
5
and
turmeric,
garlic.
turmeric, garlic 3. Okay, okay.
That
So
is
what
only.
was your diet yesterday?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So what I forgot to tell you the MRL. MRL is the unit of MRL is milligram per kg. That is ppm. Okay. Unit of MRL is ppm. That is milligram per kg. So consider here you are calculating the dietary ppm is I will put it over here. You are calculating the dietary risk assessment for say Cunard force. Okay. So for Cunard force, the MRL value, say, take the MRL, say, imagine that Cunard force is recommended in all these commodities: ragi, rice, fish, onion, tomato, ginger, tamarind, green chili. I'm avoiding fish because fish we don't have any MRL value for Cunard force, I feel. All others, I think it's having. So, because fish, see, remember, if you are recommending quinarphos for any problem, if any pest problem in fish, then only we will have an MRL value for quinarphos in fish. Otherwise, that means it is according to good agriculture practices. That means we should have a recommendation. Okay, fine. So take the case of quinarphos and the MRL value for quinarphos, say it won't be the same for all commodity. For easy purpose, I take it as 1 ppm. 1 ppm is the MRL value for quinarphos. in all the commodity. So this is in grams. The unit is weight in gram. So that means I'm converting it into kg. So this is per kg. So what is the quantity? We will assume one more thing, that all this commodity, ragi, rice, onion, tomato, ginger, tamarind, green chili, turmeric, green chili I included the chili powder also, turmeric, garlic, cowpea, banana, wheat, all this had residues at MRL level. All these commodities had quinal force, and all these commodities had quinal force at MRL level. So what will be the quantity of quinol force consumed? So what we will do is we will multiply it with 1, because that is the MRL value. Understood what I did now? Yes,
Yes,
or
sir.
no?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
And we will sum it up. So 0.714 is the quantity, 714 milligram is the quantity of quinol force you consumed yesterday. Okay, just a minute. ടീച്ചറെ ഞാനൊരു ക്ലാസ്സിൽ അത്യാവശ്യമാണ്. ടീച്ചറെ ഞാനൊരു ക്ലാസ്സിൽ അത്യാവശ്യമാണ്. So 0.714 milligram is the quantity you have consumed. Okay. So we have to calculate the dietary risk assessment. So what is the unit of acceptable daily intake?
Milligram per kg body weight per day.
Milligram per kg body weight. So this is the 0.714 milligram is the quantity of quinol force Safna consumed yesterday. What is the body weight, Safna?
70.
70. Okay. So I will divide it by 70 is equal to divided by 70. It will be 0.01. This is the value 0.01. Okay. On per kg basis, this is the quantity of quinol force you have consumed yesterday. So say if the ADI for quinol force is 0.01. Understood? If the say, imagine that, assume that ADI for quinol force is 0.01, and yesterday you have consumed 0.01 milligram per kg of quinol force. So are you at risk even after you consumed 0.714 milligram of quinol force?
No.
No. If this value was 0.02, then we consider it as a risk, because that is higher than the ADA value. Understood?
Yes, sir.
So this is how we calculate dietary risk assessment. Are you clear, all three? Bindu,
Yes,
Swati,
sir.
and Sapna?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Then I will take 5 more minutes and finish off what we are discussing. Okay. So now we will calculate. I didn't discuss about the maximum permissible intake. That's why I divided it by body weight. Actually, we will multiply it by body weight. So say from ADI we will calculate maximum permissible intake or MPI value. MPI value means ADI into average body weight. Here during that calculation, what I did was I didn't describe to you about MPA. That's why I divided it by her body weight. But otherwise, normally what we will do is we have an MPA value for the whole country because uh, uh, we have National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad. They have given the average body weight of a Indian male and Indian female. So if we say, I think the average body weight is roughly around 58 or 60 kg. So if the acceptable daily intake is 0.01 ppm, we'll multiply with the average body weight of an Indian into 60. So it will be zero point 0.6 milligram per person per day. That means an Indian can consume zero point 0.6 milligram of quinalphos per day without any adverse effect. So MPA is the product of acceptable daily intake into average body weight. So this varies with different countries because the average body weight of each country varies. So those with higher body weight has more. So what is the body weight of Swadi?
60, sir.
60. 60 means, so what was the value? 0.7, no?
Yes, sir.
Just a minute. Just work it out. 0.714 divided by 60. 0.714 divided by 60. So you consume 0.119, 0.0119. So if you are having lower body weight, your risk will be higher because everything will calculate it based on per kg body weight. So if your body weight is higher, your risk also will be lower. So then again, theoretical maximum daily intake, that is the thing which we have worked it out now. What is the maximum daily intake of that pesticide? Here we assume that we consume all the commodities and all the commodities are having the pesticides at MRL level based on the daily consumption. Here also we don't normally go for each and every commodity. What we normally do is the average consumption of an Indian is known to all. Say the case of Keralites consume a lot of non-vegetarians. Say if you see yesterday's diet of Safna, she had fish in the morning and lunch and chicken in the dinner. So that's common in Kerala. It's a non-vegetarian society. But take the case of other people, especially North Indian, mainly it is vegetarian. Again, National Institute of Nutrition will give a dietary pattern, a common dietary pattern of our country, and it for each pesticide it is calculated. The theoretical maximum daily intake is calculated based on the data given by National Institute of Nutrition. So they will say that an average Indian will consume about this much quantity of rice daily, this much quantity of wheat daily, this much quantity of bindi, brinjal daily. So all those things data is there. So based on that, it is given. Then we have the residue into food factor. Residue into food factor is nothing but, say, if you are consuming about 1 kg of food daily, and if you are having 100 out of this 1 kg of food you totally consume, if you have the diet constitute 100 gram of rice, the food factor is 100 divided by 1 kg. Understood? 0.1. That means in your total diet, the food factor for rice is 0.1, because 100 divided by 10, because you constitute only 1/10 of rice, constitute only 1/10 of your total diet. So that is the food factor is the fractional amount of a particular commodity in a diet. The average total diet is 1.5 kg per day, out of which we are consuming about 1 kg. The food factor is 1 divided by 1.5. So theoretical maximum daily intake, we'll work it out based on the residue. Here the residue we will take is MRL into food factor. So that's the one we calculated. 0.2 into MRL. I didn't work divided it by the total quantity consumed. Actually, it should have been done like that. I didn't do it. So residue MRL into the food factor. In our example, I simply multiplied it with the quantity of the food we consume. Actually, it should be based on food factor. It should be the proportion of the total commodity. Okay. Just one more slide. So then, if theoretical maximum daily intake is less than maximum permissible intake. Maximum permissible intake, we just multiplied the acceptable daily intake with our average body weight. We got the MPA value. And we calculated based on the average diet of an Indian. This is the maximum concentration. If say the Cunarfos, it is recommended in 10 commodity, 10 crops. Based on the consumption of those 10 crops, of an average Indian citizen, we calculated the theoretical maximum daily intake. And if the value of theoretical maximum daily intake is less than maximum permissible intake, it's fine. All the things which we have fixed is fine. The good agriculture practice, that means the dose fixed, the waiting period prescribed, everything will be accepted. But if the theoretical maximum daily intake crosses the maximum permissible intake value, that means say this particular, if you are adding Cunarfos is having recommended in 10 commodity, and you are adding a new commodity, say there is no recommendation in, say, pomegranate. You are giving a new recommendation for pomegranate, and you have worked out the MRL value, and again then we'll calculate the theoretical maximum daily intake by adding pomegranate into our diet. So once we add, then if it crosses the maximum permissible intake, then what will you do? Then ahead again we have to rework the dose, or one thing we can do is we can increase the waiting period also. So if we increase the waiting period, then again the residue level, the MRL level will be lower. Say if your earlier the waiting period in pomegranate was 3 days, if it is, we keep it as a waiting period as 5 day or 10 day, then the residue level will be low, MRL will be low. Then again rework it. If it is again less than the TMDA, then we will fix it is fine. So we will rework it. Are you clear or are you confused?
Little confused.
Eh?
Little confused, Bisi. Means last slide.
Last
We will
slide.
hear. Sir, upload ചെയ്തോ ഒന്നുകൂടെ കേട്ടാ ശരിയാവും.
Okay, you listen it again. Then it will be clear here. Nothing but so you work it out based on the. I just had a calculation based on an example. Actually, what normal calculation what this is, we have a set consumption pattern for an Indian. So say Cunarfos average, the National Institute of Nutrition says that an average Indian consumes about 20 or 25 different commodities daily, including cereals, fruits, vegetables, etc. 25 or 50, all those things will be listed. Say a particular pesticide, if you are wanting, if you are going to calculate the theoretical maximum daily intake, then if that particular pesticide is recommended only on 10 commodities, based on the MRL value and the food factor. We work out the theoretical maximum daily intake. That means say 100 gram of rice, 100 gram of wheat, 5 gram of papaya, 5 gram of or 10 gram of banana. So all those things we have. So we assume that an average Indian citizen consumes all these things daily. That is also an assumption. All these 50 commodities daily, and all these commodities are having pesticide at MRL level, and we know what is the total consumption of an average Indian citizen. So that is theoretical maximum daily intake. So that we have value. We compare with MPA value. MPA value is nothing but we extrapolate ADA with the body weight, average Indian body weight. If it is less than, if the consumption is less than the maximum permissibility, no issues. But if the calculated maximum daily and theoretical maximum daily intake is more than MPA, then it can have some toxicological issues. So then we have to work it out again. Either the pesticide will not be recommended, or we can go for extending the waiting period and all. So that is one thing. I will give one more example and finish off the class. Acute reference dose I will discuss in the afternoon. Because whatever we are discussed now is chronic toxicity. Acute reference dose is with respect to acute toxicity that we will discuss in the afternoon. Say, if you see the waiting period of check the waiting period of chlorantraniliprole in rice. If you see the waiting period of chlorantraniliprole in rice, the waiting period is 45. I think it is 45 days in rice, and for vegetables, it varies from 3 to 7 days or 15 days, roughly. Actually, it varies from 3 to 7 days. For cucurbits, it is 5 days. But for rice, it is 45 days. What does it mean? The waiting period of chlorantraniliprole in rice is 45 days, and in vegetables it is 5 days. What does it mean?
Persist more in rice.
Swati?
No idea, sir.
Bindu?
No idea, sir.
No idea. It doesn't have any relation to persistence. See, in rice, at what stage we should go for application of a pesticide against, for which pest we are recommending chlorantraniliprole in rice? That you should answer. Against which pest chlorantraniliprole is recommended in rice?
That's in tomato it is helicobacter, but in rice maybe leaf folder.
Leaf folder, and one more it is stem borer.
Stem borer.
Stem borer.
Mainly for stem borer. Leaf folder also it is effective. Both it is recommended. Okay. Take the case of stem borer. What stage we should go for a spray against stem borer? If you want to control the stem borer incidence, you can delay the spraying. If you have, I will give an example. Say a farmer is reporting that he has white ear syndrome. I think you know what is white ear syndrome, and whether you will recommend, once you have a white ear symptom, whether you will recommend a chlorantraniliprole at that time.
No, sir.
Why?
Means it's caused almost it caused damage. Before that, if we
Yes.
applied, means it
So
will be
before that means at when? At what time?
vegetative stage itself.
That means from panicle initiation means in any rice crop, if you see the biology of a rice crop, panicle initiation occurs 60 days prior to harvesting. And panicle emergence occurs 30 days prior to harvesting. I think you know the difference between panicle initiation and panicle emergence. Panicle initiation takes place at the base of the plant, and emergence takes place 30 days after panicle initiation. So in between these 30 and in between this 1 month 30 days period, if we have stem borer infestation, then we have the white ear. If you see the white ear, already damage is done. So if you want to apply chlorantraniliprole, it should be before that. Should be 45 days before harvest. Then we are calculating the residue after harvest only. So that means that according to good agricultural practices, the pesticide should be, the chlorantraniliprole should be applied at least 45 days before the harvest of the crop. If you apply 30 days, that means after you seeing the white ear, there is no use, as Bindu has pointed out. There is no use, there is no purpose. It doesn't constitute good agriculture practices. See the definition of MRL. MRL means that the pesticide should be used as per good agriculture practices. So if you you check with any residue, any scientist working in residue, after 45 days, the residue of chlorantraniliprole in rice will be almost zero. We don't keep it at zero because we don't know whether our equipment has the ability to detect only up to 0.01 ppm, any instrument till now. So we normally take it as a default 0.01 ppm. We don't give it as zero. We give it as 0.01, even if we don't detect any pesticide residue. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll continue with the class in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. Okay. Then if you have any doubt in that, please ask in the afternoon session. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.